I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to order at 3:01 p.m. I'd like to start with roll call. Machine is open. All right, please let the record reflect 8 commissioners are present, with Council Member or Commissioner Black absent. Start with the prayer and then the Pledge of Allegiance. We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We pray for all those who have lost their lives to this pandemic, and we pray that this pandemic comes to an end and the world moves forward to a healthy and brighter future. We pray that our parish and its residents quickly recover from the devastation from Hurricane Ida. We also pray that we'll be spared from any further harm and destruction this hurricane season. And we pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all, and for the wisdom to know right from wrong, and the courage to do that which is right. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2, executive session, there are none. Item 3, status report by the Executive Port Director.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District. Follows is my Executive Director's report for the reporting period of 15 to 27 October. During this time frame, I met with Kinder Morgan at their headquarters. I had received a notice that the executive management was making a decision many businesses did after the hurricane to repair and move forward or discuss other options. They are repairing and staying in place and are extremely interested in the port's decision to bring the rail in front of their plant following the former rail line. Our talks are ongoing, and they want to be informed when we start our capacity and alignment studies. The 2022 proposed budget has been provided to the board members and will be available on the port website and at the library beginning tomorrow. Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions or comments, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Sandy. Are there any questions from the commissioners? All right, thank you.
I have one.
Please go ahead, Mr. Kognovich.
Yeah, your weekly calendar. I'd like to know why you meet more with PABI and New Orleans Inc. than you do with us. You know, when I first got in, you came to Burris a couple times and said that would be an ongoing thing to discuss, but it hasn't happened, and I see you meeting more with them than you do me, and I should know more than they do.
And you're absolutely correct. And I will do a better job of that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Rousseau.
Since Mr. Kognovich went in that direction, could we move to item 7C and discuss the calendar while we're on that subject matter?
Certainly. 7C.
Item 7C, discussion of calendar items, Commissioner Rousseau.
Yes, we've been back and forth on emails, and Mr. Sanders, you had said that you would address the issues that I had raised. You asked me what they were.
Yes, sir.
And after looking at the calendar seems to be almost a cut and paste from week to week to week. And I guess the first question is, what items do you not put on the calendar? I mean, how much of the business is going on that you don't put on the calendar?
Well, according to the chairman, we don't put any sensitive information on it that's covered by an NDA or any personal stuff. But I think we put a little bit more than what is required by that. I put a lot of sensitive information on there, and I also put some personal stuff.
Well,
But you are right. We do have recurring meetings, and I'm prepared to discuss those as you requested in your email.
Okay, and first of all, I don't think the calendar is a document is supposed to reflect your personal business. And I don't know what you mean by personal business, but I don't see that on here. The calendar's intent is to give us a roadmap as to what the staff and you, or you and the executive director, assistant director, are doing on a weekly basis. Because when I speak with some members of the public, they're under the impression that we are meeting every week and getting an update on all of this development activity that's going on. And in fact, the only time I see you is when we come to a meeting twice a month. So that's what prompts me to come to a public meeting and ask questions, put things on the agenda, because that's the only communication that I have with the staff as to try to find out what is going on. Or when something appears on the agenda, like some of the items that we have that'll come up later, we'll discuss those, and that'll drag the meeting on a little further. However, I'm not sure what the direction of the chairman was, but that's the intent of the calendar, is to know what is going on with the staff, where they're traveling to, where they're going, those type of things. But when I see the calendar, it doesn't really tell me anything, and it's kind of repetitious. But if you want to go ahead and offer your explanation of the items that I've requested, that'll be fine this time.
Yes, sir. You had asked for, I would like to discuss the APH Trident item. That is an item that is every Monday at 2 o'clock. We started this years ago. Bob Stevens with Trident still chimes in on our meetings. It's an ongoing weekly update on where we are as far as container terminal and our internal due-outs that we have with each other. Sometimes it lasts for a good 30 minutes. Sometimes there's really nothing to discuss, but we tap into it.
So the follow-up to that is, so APH is on anybody's contract, or they're independently working on their own project as our exclusive container hauler?
That is correct.
Okay, how about Trident? Is Trident on anybody's contract?
Trident is not on anybody's contract. Bob Stevens asked if he could remain on the team on a non-paid basis because he wanted to be part of it.
And there's no obligation to pay him at a later date of?
None whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. You had here the Wednesday item, and I'm not sure what that is.
I put the Wednesday item on there because there's nothing there. So does that mean that nobody's working on Wednesday?
No, that just means we might not have a meeting that day or a conference or what have you. All right. Then you have Rotary Presentation item and kitchen meeting. I'll go to the kitchen meeting. We have an informal staff meeting that's headed up by Christy Nielsen every Friday morning in the kitchen. A lot of times we cook breakfast and we just discuss what's going on, what went on this week. It's just an internal meeting that we have, but we put it on the calendar.
Okay, and I had asked for the Rotary presentation. I noticed that, kind of related to Mr. Konovich's statement, the presentations that are given, and this happened the last time, I had asked, would you share what was shared with the Rotary? And we never did get that information, and so I see it reappear now. And I know that we have a couple of members on the board here that probably have advantage of seeing those presentations because they're members of the Rotary. But I don't know what presentation you give to the Rotary, and I think that some of that information might be valuable to the board members to also share.
I think the one that I gave is very valuable, and I would like to share that with you.
Well, do you plan on doing that?
Sir?
When do you plan on doing that?
I was prepared to do it now, or I can do it at a special meeting. However you want to do it. I can give you the wave tops right now.
That would be fine.
Okay. I met with the Rotary at the request of a Rotarian. They have a guest speaker at all their meetings. I have been there before as a guest speaker. I was going to give them an update on the container terminal, but very recently, the deputy director and I sat down and we started going over a list of what we wanted to have when this container terminal is built. Yes, it does fulfill our vision of becoming a Gulf Gateway port to the Midwest, but too often quality of life takes a back seat. So we wanted to make sure that we have baked into everything we do what quality of life we want to bring here with our community. So we both asked each other, and we probably spent about an hour doing this, how can we impact in a positive way the quality of life in Plaquemines Parish? I can share this with you at a later date, but I had it PPHT goals and objectives for the Omniport design for the construction and operation, and everything that we want baked into everything that goes in that port. We divided it into 5 major areas: aesthetics, workforce development, economic development, community involvement, and environment. And I often said a goal should scare you a little and excite you a lot. And our goal is not only to fulfill that vision of being the gateway, but also raising the quality of life here in our parish in those 5 major categories. I can go into a little bit more in depth if you care.
No, I'm just trying to get a feel for what's going on, because I like a little bit more detail about where we're standing with the port development. And I appreciate that effort, and I think that's an important part of our development as far as quality of life goes. It did shock me when you said that Kinder Morgan wants to put rail cars on the rail with the coal. I'm sure that that would be a quality of life issue that's going to come back to visit all of us if that happens.
Mr. Russo, may I?
That's not what I said. They said that they were excited. They wanted to know more about the rail. They didn't say anything about coal.
What kind of business are they in at that
That
location?
particular site is a coal.
See, I don't like to dance around the issues, unless they have some type of new product coming in. But
Well,
anyway,
okay.
I'm not going to belabor the point. We'll move on. You had a question? I'm out of order. What are you saying?
No, none at all. I just wanted some clarification. Trudy, did Mr. Sanders mention any meeting with Kinder Morgan on our Monday morning call? Did y'all talk about that? Were you aware of it?
No, didn't, because it just came up that week. I was on personal leave on Monday and Tuesday. On Wednesday, I got a call regarding Kinder Morgan. I asked if they could see us, and they said yes. I asked when. It was undecided, and then we finally set it for Friday. So I was there Friday. I went there, flew in that day, and flew out that afternoon.
And one business day later on Monday, when we had our check-in, the chair, the vice chair, it wasn't mentioned, correct? I don't remember hearing about it.
I was not there on, was that?
I handled the meeting.
Okay. I wasn't there. I was on personal leave at a funeral.
He wasn't there. I handled the meeting.
This Monday, you didn't proctor the meeting.
No, I didn't. Can't remember.
Wait,
Are
you
you
talking
talking
about
about-
last week?
Last week.
This Monday.
Well, I was out Monday and Tuesday of last week. And the meeting was last Friday.
Sandy, I remember the meeting very clearly. Although I took it on Zoom, you were sitting directly across from Mrs. Newberry.
Right.
You proctored the meeting. You facilitated the meeting on Monday.
Right. I'm talking about the meeting before that, when the meeting occurred that week.
What I'm trying to get at, though, is, there's things
What?
that y'all are working on. I don't have a clue. I don't know. Trudy, you weren't in the loop about it? The Kinder Morgan stuff, rail? Not a clue? You knew about it? It's
No,
okay if you did.
I know. No, I know. I don't know what you're talking about. We didn't have that discussion. You are correct. But we do talk about that part of the industry down there. That seems to be a high priority is the rail. From time to time, some things are discussed, but nothing too deep. I think
Right.
it's just more or less in passing. But no, you're right. I don't think we've had that discussion unless I don't know what you're implying.
For folks at home that are trying to follow along, the APH, the American Patriot Holdings vessel, is this proprietary container on barge design that is now taking a back seat. Now the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District has just taken out a $50 million financing instrument, if y'all have a better term, that, anyway. But, so now rail seems to be the main play, correct?
Along with the APH vessel.
But it is positive that y'all are working on some of these quality of life issues that I brought up.
Yeah,
Hopefully rail crossings over LA 23 at every crossing
that's part of it.
will be baked in. Great. All right, Mr. Roussel, I'm sorry, I yield to you now.
So my point was, I'm trying to drill down a little bit more on the progress of the project itself. And I'm asking, for instance, has the property been purchased yet?
No, sir.
Not yet.
You asked that question. I was going to address that next.
Okay, well,
But APMT has concluded their due diligence on this. They are putting a bow on it, and they will be making an announcement. As far as what you also asked, I'm looking for your email. You said, I would also request an update on the private effort, if it is still private, and it is, to purchase the container port site and status of the railroad effort. So I gave those to our developer who's leading that up, Mr. Fetters, and he said, as you know, Sandy, I'm not going to be there because he's in Mississippi at a funeral today as well, but he was going to be here. He said, but the request per Mr. Roussel, the land acquisition is moving forward. We have secured an option on one track and finalizing supporting documents for the second track of land. Second, we have been cleared for the review of the process by the state on our rail, and we are completing the banking transactions to move the initial pay certificate. The first rounds of funds were utilized for the works to date on the program management setup, vendor management database, vendor qualifications, and systems review, legal, and to initiate the geotech assessment -permit. We expect to execute the contracts for capacity study and alignment study shortly. I understand there is a state of the port meeting in mid-November. If any of the council members would like a briefing prior to that luncheon, I will make myself available. As I notified you yesterday, I would have attended the meeting tomorrow. However, I need to attend a family funeral in Mississippi. I will be attending and updating the council in November and December where applicable.
okay. As a follow-up to that, under the agreement that we have with LA 23 on 4C paragraph, where it says LA 23 shall, as a condition of the effectiveness of this agreement, provide to the executive director of the port a written list of persons or companies with which LA 23 has an agreement or contract related to the area provided for in this section, existing on the date of the execution of this agreement, and thereafter provided to the executive director of the port the name of any person or company with LA 23 enters into agreement or contract within 15 days of the execution thereof. Do you have a list available that you could provide the board?
I have a list, and we turned that in right when that came out. I can update it.
Well, it says here, enters into agreement or contract within 15 days of the execution thereof. It's not a static issue. If we're spending money on the rail at the cost of, and I don't know how much should we spend so far. Do you have any idea of what? So
I've not spent any money yet.
Okay. So when the contracts are executed, you will provide the list to the board within the agreement
Yes, sir.
that we have with LA
And that is also the obligation of Mr. Fetters. He will also be here at every meeting to report to y'all.
Okay, and so we have no debt so far towards the first.
No, sir.
Thank you. That's all I have on the calendar, unless you have something else to add that you would like to add voluntarily.
No, sir? Huh?
That's not as tentative, but we plan to stay with the board.
Yeah, right, yeah. This is tentative, but we have earmarked 16 November for the State of the Port address.
And that address will be given to this board?
It's going to be at the not the Bill Chase Auditorium, it's going to be at Boomtown,
So it's to who?
to the public, through Poppy, as we've done previous years.
I didn't know we took over Boomtown in Plaquemines Parish.
They wanted a place where they could have a large venue and have a good sound system.
You see
Got
the
one
problem
right
here?
back here.
What's that, Mr. Rousseau?
You see the problem here, it relates to what Mr. Konovich alluded to earlier. It seems that Pabi gets a special invitation or accommodation for a state of the port when the board doesn't have that ability.
That's not true, Mr. Rousseau. As you know, every time I've given the State of the Port address, it's been sponsored at a PABI luncheon. Right? That's correct.
Now,
It's no different this year than any other year.
I think that's the point of the
Please, order.
conversation.
No.
You should be directing a state of the port to the board.
Okay. All right.
Mr.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sandy. Mr. LaFrance?
Mr. Sanders,
Yes, sir.
dealing with the alignment of the railroad, would like to make a request that we meet with the communities that's going to be impacted by the direction that railroad is going through.
Yes, sir. That is our intent. We had some dates set tentatively, and then the hurricane came. So I have talked to a rep, and she told me just to be patient.
Okay.
They got bigger fish to fry right now, and we understand that.
Is that all, Mr. LaFrance?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right. Moving on to the next agenda item, please.
Item 3A, financial report, budget to actual.
Just a reminder, statements have to be made to the commissioners.
Donald Valet, Bill Chase. I got to tell you, as a businessman, I'm embarrassed for you all, for Plaquemines Parish, what's been going on with this port and how this was managed and handled today as it does every meeting I come to here. I come here to listen to what activity is going on with this port, what projects are going, the activity of them, where we stand with them, and what's going to happen. You all got to pull it out of Mr. Sanders as to what's happening here. There should be a schedule of 7 items or 10 items that we have working forward with all the deals that we have pending, the money that we put up, but you all don't know where they are. He hadn't told us anything today. It's great. We're going to have a quality of life. That's given. Look, I used to manage 1,600 people. I had production meetings every morning. I wouldn't have let this man in my door or thrown him out. This is bull what he's telling you all. He has not answered a direct question to you of anything that's going on. I listened to you all. Ms. Newberry, I hate to tell you, you have no clue what's going on here. You stand there and wobble back and forth what's going on with this port. They're abusing you. They're directing you what to do. And, Mr. Chairman, I sat in 2 meetings recently. One was with a law firm that talked about freedom of information, public records, and public meetings. And every one of them told me what this group is doing to you all and to the public is not declaring an open meetings into it. Second, I was in another meeting recently with one of the senators here that talked about the governor is not going to do anything at all with the Peters Road Bridge in the forthcoming future, which is a vital issue to the port and getting traffic out of it. What are we going to do with all the trucks that are coming out of this port? Where are we going with the railroad? All these cars coming through the midtown? This is absurd what's going on with this, and just wasting money over and over. We don't get a good status report on anything that's going on here, and I think it needs to be sat down. Last thing I'm going to stop. We're getting ready to come up to budget hearings. Last year we asked for a staffing plan. We asked for a review, comparison review as to what went on this past year, where the money was spent, where it's going this period. I would hope that you would allocate enough time for the public and all to see this in enough hours, and I'm talking about a whole day probably, to go through their budget and look where we're spending this money and what monies they need for the future. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Valley. Any other moving on.
Item 3A, financial report, budget to actual.
We have a presentation. Okay, great. Good afternoon. Before I start, I would like everyone to know that this presentation that is being presented here, as we have done in the past on a quarterly basis, will be posted to the Port's website for public access following this meeting. All port commissioners have been provided a 2021 total budget report and detailed budget report with actual expenditures shown as of September 30th, 2021. You can go to the next page. Oh, yes, I got it. This slide shows a recap of our total budget. Our total revenues budgeted is currently at $14,802,429. As of 9/30, we have earned $6,087,815 with 59% remaining for the year. Expenses, total personal services, total budget $2,995,519. As of as of September 30th, we have $2,006,023 in expenditures with 33% remaining for the year. Total financial services, total budget $7,852,431. As of September 30th, 2021, $3,399,789 with 57% remaining for the year. Total operating services budget $2,944,354. As of September 30th, total expenditures $1,290,436 with 56% remaining. Our capital outlay budget is currently $3,371,631. As of September 30th, we have $336,181 in expenditures, with about 90% of that budget remaining. We break down the budget into subcategories. This is the revenue budget, which breaks down that total revenue figure that I provided in the previous slide. So total, and it's broken down by grant revenue, tariff revenue, interest revenue, rents and leases revenue, and miscellaneous revenues. Our grant revenues, we currently have about 95% left of those, and a large majority of that, of the grant revenue, it depends on when EHP, it's an environmental stage, has to be passed by the federal government. So that kind of puts some of our grant projects on hold, and that's why we have about 95%. We only have about 2 grant projects ongoing right now, and I think we just started up on our 3rd one, and we haven't really gotten too many expenditures in for that yet. So we haven't earned a lot of the grant revenue, but we do have them getting started. Our tariff revenue, we had budgeted in at about $5,014,500. As of September 30th, we have earned about $3,939,459 of that, which gives us about 21% remaining for the year. Based on September 30th date, we should typically have about 25% remaining for the year, because we have went through 75% of the year. So being that we're at 21%, we're about 4% over budget, meaning we're 4% good as far as what we projected on our collection. So I will say that this September number does not include a lot of or a majority of the September revenue due to the reporting process. Basically, tariff revenue and activity on the river is reported to us upon departures of ships. So there's about a 2 to 3 week delay that we get in that revenue. So a majority of this is as of August, but I have to report it as of the September 30th. We do have about a quarter of September's revenue included in this. So I say that because we haven't had the opportunity to really evaluate what type of effect Hurricane Ida has had on the river, because a lot of this, like I stated, was August revenue, and the storm didn't hit until the end of August. So hopefully we are monitoring our activity and our reporting to see the actual effect that the hurricane has had on that 4% lead, basically, we had on tariff revenues. Our interest revenues, we are currently at about 78% remaining. That includes any interest we may earn on any money we have in banks and things of that nature. And as you know, the economy has not been that great since the pandemic, so we are a little behind in that budget category. Rents and leases and revenue, we are currently at about, we have 59% remaining. A large majority of the 4.5 million, we have 4.5 million, 50,061 that was budgeted for rents and revenue. And a large majority of that is the Venture Global lease revenue that we executed in July. So a lot of that will be earned, a majority of that will be earned in the fourth quarter. We had a partial month in July, a full month in August, and a full month in September. So the remaining rents and leases revenue should come in the fourth quarter with the Venture Global. And our last category is miscellaneous revenue, and we're currently at 74% remaining for that item, and a lot of that revenue comes from dividends and returns on some of our insurance premiums and things of that nature. So some of that usually comes again in the fourth quarter of the year, depending on how our year turned out on the miscellaneous revenues. This is just a chart that basically recaps what I just stated in the table on the revenue. Again, we did discuss tariff revenues. I did do a comparison of January to September for 2020 versus January to September for 2021. And based on our tariff revenues, we are about 10% higher than what we were last year at this time. Go to the next slide. This slide provides us with a recap of our expenses by subcategories. As we stated, we did go over the total expenses. These are, we have a few more subcategories here. So if it's okay with you guys, I will point out those that we see need additional attention, meaning that they are under the 25% for the remaining year target budget that we should be at. So we have two categories that are currently 5% or more below our target budget. That subcategory, the first one is the materials, parts, and supplies, which is currently about 15% over our target budget of having 25% remaining. We are monitoring the budget categories, and we will supply budget amendments in the fourth quarter if necessary, with additional spending. Like I say, if the additional spending is needed and we do need to do budget amendments, those will be monitored closely and presented within the fourth quarter. Our second subcategory for expenditures is other charges, which is about 72% over budget, it shows, and that is due to a reclassification of mitigation credits. We had originally budgeted that in our capital outlay budget, but after further accounting research and discussions, it should go into the operating budget, and a budget amendment will be presented in the future for the correction of that classification. So I don't want you to be too alarmed with that other charges category, because it will be corrected with a budget amendment forthcoming. And yeah, the next slide will basically recap the subcategories and where we are. And as of September 30th, again, this will all be presented and available on the port's website. And my contact information is there as well if the public has any questions regarding the fourth quarter. Subject to the board's questions, that concludes my financial report for the third quarter.
Thank you, Shambro. Mr. LaFrance, oh, sorry, he's out the queue now. Any questions from the commission? Mr. LaFrance, you were in the queue?
No, that was from last time.
All right. Mr. Russo? Are there any comments from members of the audience?
Rob Forshade. My only question is, on the website, will we have access to further detail besides subcategories? And there should be a lot of description underneath each one of these subcategories, especially others.
There will be a line item breakdown. Basically, if there, let's say, is 10 different line items for other category, as far as if it's other dash mitigation credits or other dash pencils, those line items will be presented following behind this. It is presented to the board. I do give out a detailed report to the board in that format, and it will be added behind the presentation on the website.
Okay, so I guess to dig through all of that fluff, there will be details under each one of those subcategories that describes every dollar spent on each one of those subcategories. That is the answer, correct? Yes.
A line item detail will be presented as far as vendor information, check information, date information, and whether or not the $100 spent was $10 checks. That type of detail is not provided. It is public record, and if you request that information from the finance department, then we will provide it. But it will not be posted to the website. We do not issue reports in that format.
Okay, so there's a public request at this meeting right now that we get the details of all budgetary items on the website. And we have asked for this over and over and over. Look, I'm tired of asking about it. But it's, it continues to be a problem. Why? If it's ever generated, why would it not be on the website? I just don't grasp the reason for that. So maybe somebody can explain that to me.
Mr. Forshey, I agree with your need for transparency. I do understand that it is a lot of work on the part of the staff to get this together, and that the questions, the Freedom of Information Act request, it's a formal process that has to be done in certain ways. And I don't know if we could do it sitting here from the dais. You have to put in a written request to the Director of Administration. I highly recommend you CC both myself, Vice Chairman Woman Newberry, and that is the rough process. I can connect you with Danny Garrett, who could explain exactly which steps that you need to take to get that information. And I can ask the port staff that they have the financial information as granular as possible on the website. That request doesn't always rise to the top, though.
I understand. And so, just like you just got through mentioning, Chairman, the details are there. It's not any more work. It's not any more work for someone to copy and paste half of the information or all of the information onto a website. It's not like we're paying, it's not a newspaper, we're not paying per line, we're not paying per letter or per space. So what we need to do is we need to provide all of the information for every line item on the website. And that is what we have requested over and over. And by the way, this has been both written and discussed at this podium at meetings prior to today. And we have asked that of the chairman, the vice chair, and the commission to please require this administration of the port to provide all of the information. And I mean, look, I don't know any other way to put it. And it just hadn't happened yet.
Hello. So has that request been put in by Mr. Fauché? I'm just asking administration.
Not by Mr. Fauché. It has been by others. But it has been given. That written information on the on the budgetary items has been written and submitted to the administration of this port, as well as been discussed at this podium on many times. And you know that, Trudy, because you've been all part of this. This is not something new. Deer in headlights doesn't get it. It is a fact that this has been asked over and over, and we don't get it. We don't get the information. So why? I'm not real sure, besides cats in the litter box covering up crap. So why you wouldn't be clear with all of the information, put it on the website. That's all we're asking.
So are you saying that they're not being clear versus what the council puts on the parish side? Or is the parish not being clear either?
I'm not talking about the parish.
I
This
know
is
you're
not the
not.
parish. This is the port meeting.
And I understand that, and you're correct, but I'm just trying to figure out what you're looking for. You're looking for details as how much they're spending, like she said, maybe on a pack of pencils? Is that how detailed you want?
If that is what, is that what the details include? Yes. Even the pack of pencils, even the pack of paper, even the contract that you have with the vendor of, I don't care whether it's Printall or whoever is printing your information. All of the professional services should be listed. All of the items should be listed. Everything should be listed in the budget. There should be no subcategories and subcategories of subcategories.
Shimbrow, can you put that on our list to discuss Monday and see how we're going to address this with Mr. Fauché? And
I will definitely add it to our agenda for discussion.
Thank you.
Also, I do, Chair, if I may, I did want to mention, as Mr. Sanders mentioned, that the 2022 proposed budget has been presented and provided to the board. I do encourage, we do have some changes, some major changes coming up for the 2022 budget. So I am encouraging everyone on the board to please contact the office, myself, to set up meetings to discuss the proposed budget prior to the budget hearings. We have approximately 30 days. I am very much available over the next month. Like I say, I'm keeping my schedule open, and I really encourage the board members to contact us and discuss the budget and how it's presented, and that we can be prepared for the budget hearings if there's any additional requests or changes, and that way we have discussed it up beforehand on the budget hearings, and we can run it to ground and have all the information and details available for the public at the budget hearings. But there have been some major changes that needs to be discussed. So I am encouraging everyone to please contact me to set up some meetings over the next month to have those discussions.
As discussed in one of the Monday morning meetings, will you have a sample budget with the full ferry schedule included with the costs that will?
It has been presented in this proposed budget. Yes, so that is one of the main items that we would like to discuss and have ready and prepared for the budget hearings. Yes, it has been included in the budget.
Thank you. And while I shouldn't respond to Mr. Fauché, I definitely remember sitting at the dais in Point of La Hache asking for that information to be included on the website. And I apologize that request hasn't been fulfilled, and I didn't follow up as closely as I should have. But I'm in full agreement with you. It's a governmental entity. The books need to be wide open for anything that's not proprietary. And most of this stuff is just the regular nuts and bolts of daily government and needs to be visible. And I hope I can get that commitment out of the staff as well. And Mr. Sanders, can you help to facilitate that? That's not a yes, but thank you. Mr. Valley.
Mr. Chairman, first off, I agree with everything Rob has said. This didn't start just to here. This has been going on almost 2 years. Myself, Rob, and Chris Schultz went over to the agency, spent hours over there looking at the books and records and suggestions there. I've sat down and talked to several attorneys about it. All these records are available to the public, and anybody can go in and review them at any given time. That's cumbersome. We don't need to do that. If what Rob has talked about, what we've all asked for, is put on the website, It's there. You don't have to bother everybody to it. What I'm sitting here, though, when we look today, is we look at a budget variance report. It's a waste of time what you're getting here. What you need is a revenue forecasting program. You got to talk about what's happening, what we can do about the revenue in each category that's happening, what are we doing about our expenses going forward, not how much is left in our budget. That may be something you compare it to, but where are we at the status with this operations of this port? Where are we right now? Has COVID had effect on us? Has IBIC had effect on our revenue for this forthcoming year? And you all sit there on Monday morning. I mean, Ms. Newberry, you sit there with as vice chair of this group. Do you know what's going on? Is revenue for the port?
We'll be sitting down talking about it the next month of the new budget.
Yeah, but every Monday you ought to be talking about everything that goes on with this port. The revenue forecasting, what we're talking about, the expenses, the operation. It's just like right now, y'all going to be talking about civil service in a few minutes, which I got a lot to say about that. But, some of this stuff needs to be brought out to the public. You need to look at what's going on. This port and this parish is dependent upon the revenue from this thing. We want to take care of Mr. Bartholomew with his ferries. We need revenue sources for that. Are we on budget to where we're coming in right now?
We do talk about budget problems, yes.
Well, do you know, are we on line with our budget as to the revenue for this coming year, the remaining of the year, and what effect COVID had its head on that?
Yes, we've talked about tariffs. We talk about a few things.
Be specific. Are we in budget? Are we in line with it? Is there a variation from it?
Do you know the variation?
I just presented what we had left in the budget for the year. Yeah. So we do go over this every month at the port board meeting. They're usually held in Point LaHash on the schedule that we're on.
And they're on the website also?
Only the quarterly reports are on the website.
Mr. Valley, it's difficult to get details when, you're not hearing about some of the pertinent meetings that.
We've had this problem from the conception of what's going on there. They seem to forget this administration works for you all and for the public. And there's nothing confidential that's out there. There's nothing proprietary that's out there, but they treat it like that. And it's just like, put the numbers out there. Where are we? No one's saying there's anything wrong, but where are we so we can look at what's going to happen?
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Commissioner Gui.
Yes, at the Monday meeting, if you could also put on your agenda to discuss the feasibility of having individual or group budget hearings with each of the commissioners so that we have working knowledge of the budget at the budget hearings. We've done that before, and it's always been enlightening because we're in a closed environment, one or two commissioners, and we can really get down to answering all the questions. And that way, when we get to the budget hearings, hopefully those questions will be answered. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Gui. Commissioner Rousseau.
Yes, and just to follow up on that, while that may be beneficial to some members, I want the public to understand that that's not to take place of the public hearing that is required by law for our budget, to be able to have the public understand what's going on as well. And if individual members want to get educated to what's in the budget, I understand that. But I want the public to understand, as we just had this long discussion about the budget and finances, that we will have a full open process with a budget hearing for the public as well. Thank you.
Chairman, my follow-up.
Mr. Forshey, I just want to remind you of the rules that you're only allowed to come up one time per agenda item. I'm sorry.
That's correct. And this is about Mr. Stewart's response. This is all about his response to onesie twosie going and sitting with the port. Onesie twosie is not.
I've asked you, please, I'm sorry. It's the rules. It's one per.
This is not the same item. This is not the same item.
We're talking about the budget. You've already come up. I apologize. I want you to have as much voice as possible. Unfortunately, I have to follow a very set standard of rules. Things are set up a certain way. If you want to talk to Mr. Gui after this meeting about it, that's fine. If you want to weave it into your next statement, All right, go ahead.
I'll do that. You should have an opinion. That's a different subject.
All right, moving down the agenda, please. If there's no other comments.
Item 4A, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of bids for furnishing bulk diesel fuel for the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District for a period of 1 year and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Blink.
As read, it's pretty straightforward.
Second?
Offered by Blink, seconded by LaFrance. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Valley, question about the diesel purchase.
I've been home with COVID tonight, so you're getting what I've been thinking about. Where are the 3 bids that came in for this fuel dock? And who was the low bidder? And what is the price of the contract per gallon? And have you all considered looking at diesel futures as where the market's going today as opposed to a fixed price contract?
Am I alive? Excuse my voice. I've lost it this morning. We put out a packet to 14 vendors for fuel this year. It's been steady increasing over the years. We had met with 2 or 3 vendors personally. At the end of the day, after it was advertised, we received 2 bids from 2 separate vendors. The lowest
on
bid.
the RFP you put out, there was only 2 bidders?
2 bidders responded, with 14 packets being sent out. Yes, sir, that's correct.
And who were those 2 bidders?
CARC, which is the current fuel supplier for the PPHTD. CIARC, and Tri-State Oil is the 2 bidders that came in.
I heard you say Tri-State Oil, but I didn't hear the other person. Who was it?
CIARC.
What happened to Stone? Stone didn't bid?
Did I say they bid, sir? I just told you the 2 bidders that I'm trying to. CIARC.
They didn't look at the original bid?
Mr. Valley.
Mr. Chairman.
If I may finish.
I'm sorry.
We put out 14 bid packets mailed to 14 different vendors for fuel. Last year was about a dozen, if I recall. The direct administration normally handles some of this process, but I'll give you everything you need to know, if you let me.
Did the bids come in under last year's prices?
No, sir, they did not. I'm going to tell you them in a second if you'd like to hear them.
Please.
Diesel.
And is that proper? I asked the board to put these prices out because I don't think contract was signed yet. It's only went through the process of RFP and opening the bids. So I don't know if I should give the rest of this information in the public meeting yet.
We're forced into accepting it in just a little while here. So
Exactly. Tri-State Oil is the person that we are accepting the bid from. And I'll give you one more bit of information that may help you out. The bid goes like this. The up price per gallon on normal business hours and the up price per gallon delivered on holidays and after normal working hours. That's how the bid goes out. That's how the RFP goes out.
what's the upcharge on the cents per gallon there?
30 cents on the daily normal working hours, 75 cents after hours and holidays.
Thank you.
That is up 10 cents on the daily, normal daily from last year, as these people are projecting. And in addition to that, these folks, whatever vendor we choose, has to give us an OPUS report. So that answers your question, Ms. Valley. We work off an OPUS report on this fuel price we pay per gallon. It's an upcharge we pay. So it fluctuates every day. And you well know that.
Mr. Valley, I'm not a businessman, but, well, not in this sense, but, I mean, do you think 10 cents per gallon upcharge, given the supply chain issues, COVID, hurricanes, whatever else, is in line with maybe the CPI?
I still didn't hear the price of the gallon.
There's
on the 2 bidders.
There's fixed price per gallon, there's a market price per gallon, and on a regular day, during regular business hours, the upcharge is 30 cents per gallon.
I did hear that.
On holidays and weekends, it's 75 cents per gallon upcharge.
So this is a floating rate per gallon?
It is.
On market rate? Okay. Terrible.
All right. And if you think a better deal could be struck next year, we'd be happy to talk about it. We appreciate your advice.
We would definitely send you a bid package.
It's low bid, so it's not negotiations, it's low bid. Lowest bid.
Thank you, Paul. Next on the agenda?
Got a vote on it.
Oh, yeah, let's do it. Machine's open. Passes 8-0. Something we can all agree on.
Item 5, introductions of ordinances and resolutions. We have some. The first one is for Commissioner Bartholomew, a resolution of the Plaquemines Parish Council acting as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, accepting the operational authority and the budgetary responsibility of the ferries currently operated by the Plaquemines Parish government and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. The next one is for Commissioner Roussel, a resolution amending certain terms of resolution number 21-173 adopted on the June 24, 2021, making certain findings with respect to and authorizing the issuance of not exceeding $300 million Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District Dock and Wharf Facilities Revenue Bonds, NOLA Oil Terminal LLC Project, Series 2022. Awarding said bonds to the purchasers thereof, approving the form and authorizing the execution and delivery of an indenture of trust, a loan agreement, a ground lease, a facilities lease, and a bond purchase agreement, fixing the maturity and rate of interest, authorizing the execution of other documents in connection therewith, authorizing the officers of the issuer to do all things necessary to effectuate this resolution, and providing for other matters in connection with the foregoing. And that's all we have.
Thank you, Stacy.
Item 6A, there are none. 6B, a resolution electing the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District Chairperson for 2022 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Blank.
I'd like to offer it as read.
Second.
Seconded by Kognovich. Are there any questions from the board? Any comments from the audience? All right, machine's open. And the measure passes.
Item 6C, a resolution electing the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District Vice Chairperson for 2022 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Blank.
I'd like to offer as read.
Second.
Second by Kognovich. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Any comments from the audience? All right, offer. All right. Congratulations to the new chair people.
No, it ain't.
Oh, missed one here. Oops. All right, that's that.
Tell us who they are.
Oh, I'm not, let to get the secretaries to go backwards here. Just one second. No, they'll pull that back up. The last vote, is it possible to pull the last vote back up, the results?
Who's the chair and the vice chair? The chair we voted on was Benny Roussel, and the vice chair was Colton LaFrance.
That's all I want. It wasn't clear what you did for the public. Thank you. Congratulations.
They don't see the names on the board, so.
All right, next on the agenda, please.
Item 6D, an ordinance to create the legal department and the position of Executive Counsel of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District to amend the 2021 General Fund Manpower Structure and Operating Expenditure Budget to provide for the legal department and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Rousseau.
Yes, I'll offer this item next for a second, which is done at the last meeting. Commissioner Blink seconded this. And what this does, it sets up a position in the Port Harbor Terminal District as an employee under contract. And the important parts here are that, and we have another piece of legislation that's on the table as well, The slight differences, they're pretty much the same, is that this one allows the chairman and the executive director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District shall receive all the applications. However, no less than 3 applications shall be submitted to the board for consideration no later than the November 30th, 2021 meeting and within 30 days of any future vacancy in the position. The applicants shall each appear before the full council for a final interview during which the individual council members may ask questions to the applicants. Following the interviews, the council by a majority vote of the members may present and may select one of the applicants or reject all of the applicants. This is one of the differences because it sets up process on how to go about getting the applicants and submitting them to the board. The other major point here is that the executive council shall work with the executive director and the other port staff on the next sentence. It says that they work with them cooperatively, but however, the executive council, because the client is the board, shall report to the board. The other competing legislation says that it reports to the executive director. And so the difference being that the board is the client, he should report to the board. But he works on a daily basis with the staff. And of course, he works with the council as the Port Harbor and Terminal District members as needed, similar to what we have with Mr. Garrett. The other difference, I believe, this legislation that we have before us today allows including advertisements in regional newspapers and other media within 7 days of the adoption of this ordinance, which allows us to seek applicants through the media of newspapers and so forth. And the other one does not. And the difference also, there'll be some contradictory language in the next one if we get to that. So that's all I have, and I ask for your support to be able to move this forward. It's long overdue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell. Is there any questions from members of the board here? All right. Are there any comments from the audience? Mr. Valley?
Donald Valley. Mr. Russell, I think your idea is well taken. We looked at this many years ago. I've served on a lot of different boards, and without question, you want legal counsel to represent you and report to you directly, not to staff. And I wholeheartedly support what you do, and I think I'd recommend everybody else to vote in favor of it.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. Any other comments?
I've got one.
Mr. Sanders, please.
When this was first put out, we asked other ports, 12 ports, do they have in-house counsel or is it outsourced? Who hires the individual? Who do they report to? Their salaries and any other special thing. And overwhelmingly, on the in-house folks, I'm not sure if folks can see that, they are hired by the executive director. There's only 2 that had executive director with board approval. Obviously, ours would be with board approval. But it reports to the executive director. Now, if you want to call that best practices, call it best practices. But in any other organization, you call it chain of command. And the chain of command would be that individual, if he's on the staff, he will be reporting to the appointing authority, which is me, the executive director. And I think that chain of command, it clarifies roles, it increases productivity, it reduces frustration, and operating without a chain of command, it sows chaos and disorder. So I would ask the board to reconsider that this individual, if he works for the staff, he should be reporting to the executive director and not the board. Doesn't mean he doesn't listen to the board, but he's on the staff and he reports to the executive director.
So to address that, Mr. Sanders, in this hire practice, who would be the client?
I didn't understand your question. I didn't hear it correctly.
With this hire of an executive council by this board, who would be the client?
Who would be the client?
No client, he's a staff member.
He's the staff member.
Correct. So who would be the client if litigation occurred?
They would be representing the port.
Exactly. So why would you not want him to report to the board? It's a matter.
No, you're getting it wrong. You didn't listen to what I said.
I did listen to what you
I said in 12 different cases, that executive director is the guy that the in-house counsel reports to. It's called chain of command. All right? And you're going against the grain of what chain of command says. And that promotes chaos.
Shimbro?
Well, wait a minute. I appreciate your.
And you're a big believer in best practices, right?
I'm a big believer in what's right.
You're a big believer in best practices. That's what you said all about all our legal stuff and anything else that we've done.
I have the floor right now.
Hold on.
And
1 second. I'd like to pause this conversation for just one moment. Shimbro, can you please pull our annual legal fees, since these other numbers are up here right now? Can you please pull the annual legal budget for Plaquemines Parish, Port Harbor Internal District? The conversation can now continue. Thank you.
so my point is this. When we hire an attorney as the board, and I'm not sure what this is supposed to represent. I'm representing the board as part of a client team. And when a client hires an attorney, there's a client-attorney relationship. The client is the board. Therefore, the attorney should represent and report to the board. Now, that doesn't say he doesn't report to work every day in your office, and he reports to you, and y'all work with him, because obviously we're not going to be there. So I'm not sure why y'all are hung up on this one word about reporting to the client, because the client is the board. And as you know, in litigation that we've had in the past, we've had to sue ourselves to find that out. And that effort was led by the staff to sue the board, and we had to use the council attorney to defend us because you used the board attorney to sue the board.
Are you saying we're that much different than the Port of New Orleans, Port of South Louisiana, Port of St. Bernard, Greater Baton Rouge, Fourchon, Cato Bossier, Port of Gulfport, Port of Tampa, Port of Mobile, Port of Houston?
I'm saying if that's how you want to twist this, yes.
I'm not twisting it. That's what it is.
Shimbro, what is...
And I'm just saying that if that individual does not report to the executive director, it's going to promote chaos in the workforce.
And how would that be? Because no one up
Because of principles of chain of command.
Look, General, I understand that, that's what you live by. I also live by the fact that I have attorney-client relationship. If I hire an attorney to represent me, I want him to be loyal to the client. If we have a dispute with any employee sitting there, including you, we can't have the board attorney representing you against the board. We can't have that. And we've had that in the past.
I've said my concern. I've laid it out. So
I know, I understand, but my point is this. I'm trying to just express the client-attorney relationship here, because we did have something like that almost went awry when you had a challenge with the last issue with Mr. Blink. You had the labor lawyers had to back up. We had to get the council attorney involved to make sure that y'all followed the policy, because we don't want you taking the legal counsel that is hired by the board to represent the board to use the legal counsel against the board. And that has happened. It has happened. The litigation is a prime example. Mr. Rathburn represented a majority of interest to sue the board's authority.
that was what you guys decided. Okay?
However,
that was what you guys decided.
I understand
Not
that.
Rathburn didn't take that on by himself.
No, but Rathburn was instructed by the staff.
Oh, by the board. By the board.
Let's
It was
go chain
approved.
of command. Who's the top chain? Who's the first chain in this command?
And the employee staff, the executive director.
The executive director runs the day-to-day operations.
First link in this chain is these 9 people sitting here.
And you hire him.
That's right. And then he answers to us,
That's
and
right.
all of y'all answer to us.
That's right. And we all answer
That's
to him.
right.
Just every staff member does.
And so should the attorney.
Answer to him, yes. Answer to him,
I've
yes.
stated my case. I
Mrs.
think
Newberry?
everyone understands it.
Yeah, and this is very controversial, and I know mine's next. I look at the board as part-time board members. We don't see day-to-day operations. We have hired Mr. Sanders to do a job. He is the port director. He tends to the day-to-day operations. In his contract, he sees to personnel. He has port staff. So I agree. We talked about looking into best practice, and that's what they did. It does say in my legislation that he will work cooperatively with the board. I think if we had any issues with that in the future, I mean, it's something we could look into, but Mr. Sanders does see the administration on day-to-day operations where we don't. I'm sure he would report to us because it is a verbal message in my legislation that he does cooperate with the board, and I don't think that'll be a problem. But I would think that he would report directly to Mr. Sanders, so that's where I lie.
And just as a follow-up, I'm not saying that he doesn't report to him on a daily basis and work with him. However, in the legislation and the contract, it has to be clear who the client is. And the client is the board. Now, I don't know how to make it any clearer than that, because we can't have the council hire an attorney to represent employees against the board. If we hire an attorney to represent the board, he should report to the board. Now, you know, I'm not sure how the questions were asked and how this information was developed by this spreadsheet, but obviously a lot of time went into it. But to be honest with you, we are different than any other port in the state. And all the ports are different than other ports. There are no two ports alike. We can understand that. And you can finger it all you want, Mr. Matthews.
Show you standard.
Yeah, I understand what you did.
Best practice.
Yeah, that's what you say.
That's what the sign says.
No. See this interaction right here? It does you no good.
I agree,
So why do you do it?
because I'm trying to make sure you understand exactly where we got it from, sir. 'Cause
Well, I understand clearly the attorney-client privilege relationship. I understand that. Believe me. And that's the only point I'm trying to make. Now, if Mr. Garrett was here representing the board, he would answer to the board like he answers to the council. He does answer to the council. He doesn't answer to the employees because he represents the board. So, look, I understand that, you know, y'all have put a lot of effort in this. Then if this does not pass, the next legislation has to be amended because it's got some fatal flaws in it. So I'm asking you to support this legislation. It gives this council the authority to interview the candidates so they can pick who is going to represent this board. The next legislation hamstrings that. So we'll see.
So just a quick look through this list here. There's different ports and there's different amounts that they spend on legal counsel. And, you know, of note, you know, I just went and looked at the tonnage because that wasn't provided.
Just to be clear, that's only for one general counsel position, that average. Okay.
Got it. But anyway, I was looking at the tonnage, and, you know, Houston is the second largest port in the country. It's moving 229 million tons annually. They have a $273,000 budget. We have $195,000. We're moving 58 million tons. Port Fourchon here, they only spend $90,000. I'm sorry, Port of South Louisiana, which is the largest port in the country by volume, is only spending $177 million. And, oh, I'm sorry.
$1,000.
It's $177,000 for one attorney. They actually have 3 attorneys, so it's far more than that.
Got it, Paul. Thank you. Anyway, Port of South Louisiana is spending $90,000, and they're moving 267 million tons annually.
But they also have outside legal, if you notice on the matrix we put together.
Well, let me just say this. I don't think that we're here to debate how many attorneys, who has, and all of that. It's a simple matter for me to understand that the client-attorney relationship exists and that the board ought to be able to have the opportunity to interview the candidates and review who they're going to hire. And I believe the board has that responsibility to do that. And that's what this legislation does.
Thank you for offering, Mr. Roussel. Are there any other questions from commissioners on this item? Mr. Forshey, do you have any comments?
Yes, Rob Forshey. I guess I could compare this this little spreadsheet that's been spread here, or that's been put up, to the parish, comparing this for the millages. Okay, so you're gonna compare parishes like Jefferson Parish to Plaquemines Parish. That's ludicrous. And by the way, Ms. Trudy Newberry, the vice chair, this administration has not given y'all what y'all have asked for since day one I've been involved with this. So I don't know how in the world you think some legislation that you've come up with is going to change that. It's not. There is no change. There is no change with this board. They're going to do what they want. I believe that the state in a litigation stated who is the governing authority of this port, and that is you 9 members. And that is who this attorney needs to answer to, needs to be hired by, and I think that that is the best interest for the citizens of this parish. And what is not understood about that with you 9 guys, I understand that there's about 4 or 5 of y'all that do understand that, but I'm not real sure about the others. So what I would state is the state decided who is the governing authority. That is where the responsibility lies. That is who the attorney needs to represent, and period, end of story. Work with the guys, work in the same. There is definitely a problem with communication, the lack of wanting to communicate between this table right here and the 9 members on this board. They do, however, want to participate with PAB and every other entity that is against the 9 members that are sitting up here. So why in the world would you facilitate any means to allow them to do that? I don't understand. But this legislation that is on the table right now, it does require the attorney to represent you as well as the other 8 members that are up on that board or commission.
Mr. Fauché, it's very important that when staff is hired, we still have to vote. We still have the final vote say so on who's hired.
You don't.
It still has to come to the board.
You don't.
Yes,
you don't. You don't. You need to understand what you do. The only thing you do, Ms. Newberry, is fund it.
That person needs to work with the administration, so they have to have a good relationship. So I think it's important that they definitely have input on their day-to-day operations on who's being hired.
Oh, well, I'm not saying that they should not have input, and I'm not sure. In fact, I know that the legislation on the table right now does require them to communicate with the board, with the administration. I think that this legislation that's on the table right now requires that. So why would you require to cut out your authority, your representation in your legislation? You should withdraw your legislation, support this legislation that's on the table right now 100%, and get this done for the people and for the citizens of this parish.
Thank you for your opinion.
Oh, it's not an opinion, it's a fact. There's a difference between an opinion and a fact. Okay, and the state of Louisiana has clarified the fact that you are the governing authority of this board, of this administration.
Thank you, Mr. Forshey.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Henry. How are you? Nice to see you this evening.
How are you today?
It's stressful.
Arthur Henry, Bell Chase. Listen, Colonel, when I should be on your side, I'm on your side. But this one, Benny, you absolutely correct, man. This thing is in the charter that the people, the board, represents the port. So, the board should have the power. The board should have the power. Not taking anything away from the colonel, but Benny, you're 100% correct on that.
These two pieces of legislation are a bit of a pivotal moment. Sometimes it seems that the port is a bit unwieldy in that this board doesn't have good control over it, and that they sometimes do things without telling us, and we often find out at the last minute. I think Mr. Roussel's legislation maybe comes out of that a bit. And I think Trudy has a difference in opinion, and she wants, maybe she thinks things are fine. I personally want to have my say and finger on the trigger or whatever else when it comes to what kind of development is going to be here. Are we going to really ease quality of life issues with it? Or are we going to just run roughshod over the people here? Because ultimately this is your parish, and development can work for you or it can work against you. And this vote represents whether we're going to have control of the ship or we're going to let port staff that do not answer to the public here have control over who the next attorney is. Information seems to be lacking. Yield. Are there any other questions or comments before we take the vote? All right. Machine's open. That's it. That's where we're going. In Plaquemines Parish. Commissioner Arborough.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the vote on item 6B.
Okay. All right. Let's open the machine back up. Are there any other? Yep. Okay. Go back. All right. Seconded by, offered by Arborough, seconded by Dewey.
This is to allow the reconsideration.
For him to be vice chair? Hold on. Stop.
Danny, is he here? Can you, I'm not sure if Councilmember Arborough can do, he was on the prevailing side the first time. Yeah, okay, sorry about that.
He was on the prevailing side.
Right.
Only a member on the prevailing side of the vote.
Right. Okay, got it. Thank you. Are you ready for me to open the vote? I mean, to end it?
Commissioner Arborough, do you care to explain why you'd like to have this for reconsideration for the public?
Yes, it was a mistake on my vote, and I didn't realize it until after it passed. It went through, that I pressed the wrong button.
So, you ready for me to end the vote? Susan. Motion failed. Okay, I'm going back here now.
Explain to the public what just happened.
I think I'm going to bump this one to Mr. Arborough and let him explain his words.
Explain, I asked for a reconsideration, but unfortunately I didn't get the votes to reconsider the vote.
It was for the port chairman position, correct?
For the port chair position, correct.
Okay. So the vote stands as voted originally.
Yes.
And that was for the chairman of the commission,
Yes.
correct? And that chairman was voted in, that chairman is?
Benjamin Rousseau. Benedict. It's Benedict.
Okay.
Rousseau.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
Item 6E, an ordinance to create the legal department and the position of Executive Counsel of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District to amend the 2021 General Fund Manpower Structure and Operating Expenditure Budget to provide for the legal department and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Newberry, and we have changes.
Those changes went out, that's correct?
Yes. On line 31, under Section 1C, they added, as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, once the candidate is selected, and they added the. On line 35, or 34, they took out and. On 35, they took out other and executive, and added after port staff, and the Plaquemines Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. On 41, they took out unless otherwise excused by the executive director, and they added item G. The board and executive director of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District shall receive all applications. However, no less than 3 applications shall be submitted to the board for consideration.
Thank you, I'll offer it.
By Newberry, seconded by Dr. Gui.
And of course, we had a long discussion on this. And as I said, I think this position is an important position. This is an executive council that has to work with the executive director. I think he should have a choice in this matter. If anyone wants to put an amendment in, it might be something I would consider. But I'm just as read with changes. Thank you.
Sure, does this allow for advertising in the publications and Roussel's legislation?
I'm sure. Is that the process that we go through on hiring?
You wrote the legislation. Is it in there? Do you know if it's in your legislation? The advertising of the position?
Did you want to put it in? Did you want to make an amendment? When we hired,
I would like that. I think it would open up the pool to more candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have any problems with that.
Can we take some of that from the other legislation, just weave it in?
So Mr. Blink's offered an amendment. How's that work, Kim?
Let me get to a microphone for me. Oh, I'm on. Okay, let me. At the end, well, on line 63, we can add at the last sentence says, direct port staff to take such efforts as are reasonable and prudent to advertise for the new position of executive counsel, consider applications prior to the end of 2021, and to report back to the council with the selection of hire. We can add to that, including advertising in the, I'm sorry, wait, this is not the same on both of them. Okay. On line 64, we'll add another section, scratch what I just said, to state that the port staff shall take such efforts, including advertising in regional newspapers and other media, within 7 days of the adoption of this ordinance.
Thank you. Like to offer the amendment?
You can either offer it with changes and not have to vote again, or you can make an amendment to it.
I'll offer it with changes.
And Dr. Gui, would you like to, okay. Now we can just discuss it and vote.
Just for a clarification of the amendment, this is an amendment to expand the advertising of the position, is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So you said to regional and?
Regional newspapers and other media outlets.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Regional newspapers and other media outlets.
Okay.
Within 7 days of the adoption of the ordinance.
Rousseau, you have the floor.
Yes, the legislation has some contradictory language in here that if you talk about convoluted and contradiction and chaos, this is what it will lead to if you adopt this legislation. If you look on line number 32, where it says, the sole governing authority of Plaquemines Port Harbor Terminal District, once a candidate is selected by the executive director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor Terminal District, and then you go down to G, and it says the board and executive director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor Terminal District shall receive all applications. However, no less than 3 applications shall be submitted to the board for consideration. So if you're allowing the director to give you 1 applicant, and then you allow the board to have 3, and then on the next page, you say the director port staff to take such efforts as are reasonable and prudent to advertise for the new port director, position of executive council, and consider applicants prior to the end of the year and to report back to the council with a selection of hire.
Mr. Roussel, that's incorrect. The purpose is that with the applications and the language that you put in regarding having no more nor less than 3 applicants, the board and the executive director shall receive those applicants, however many that they are. Once the interview process is final and the executive director selects the person to serve in that role, then the board approves the contract.
So we get to see the applicants, but we don't get to interview them.
Sure, you can interview them if you like. That's absolutely, that's not the problem. At the end of the day, the executive director makes a selection and then brings it to the board for a contract, the same as all other unclassified positions at the port.
So it makes no sense for us to be able to get the applications and then get handed 1 applicant back for approval.
Well, that's the role of the port board and executive director for you guys to provide the input based on the applications and the interviews and bring that to the executive director. And once the executive director makes a recommendation, it brings to the board for approval of the contract.
So the input is not a vote. The board doesn't have any say other than.
They have a say on the contract, yes. They have to approve it. It's basically a nomination, and then you bring it to the board for approval, which is pretty standard for ports.
Well, let me tell you my experience with this process in hiring you.
That's right. Same process.
Exactly. And let me tell you what went flawed there. We sat at the board and we scored the candidates, correct? We had the executive director in the scoring process, and guess what he did? He sandbagged the scores.
That's a very serious allegation, Mr.
It's a fact.
It's a very serious allegation, sir.
Let me
That is a very serious allegation.
I have the floor, and I'm going to make it one more time.
That's a very serious allegation.
Not anymore.
Councilman Black and I discussed
Mr.
this.
Rousseau, please.
What do you want me to say?
I think it's inappropriate.
The facts are the facts. The score sheets are there. Go look at them yourself.
Hi, Mr. Forshey.
Once again, this attorney represents you guys. We do not want, we being the citizens of this parish, do not want someone who has not followed or tried to follow what the board, the commission, has recommended or wanted to approve, override, however you want to call it. He can suggest to the commission, but not hire. So this legislation that's on the table right now needs to be voted down only because of that, because the attorney represents you guys. I'm not real sure why this is not being requested to be put into this legislation, but to tell you the truth, y'all need to take a break and rewrite this whole legislation, because I'm no attorney, and good God, I see all the conflicts in this legislation as it was read a second ago. So,
Point well taken. Thank you, Mr. Forshey.
Yeah.
Tabling it would be a good idea, and trying to rework it into something a little bit more usable. But, Russ. Hi, Mr. Valley.
Thank you. Again, it's disappointing. You your board is a governing factor for this parish of this board. You should be able to hire and fire the two most important people in this thing, the executive director that you want to dictate and give your orders to as to what to do, and legal counsel to represent you in all cases and follow what you all want to do. Now, he may work with the staff, but he runs parallel. You'll hire and fire these two people, well, in addition to Matthews as well. But those should be done by you all, and they should follow you, not the staff. I keep hearing every time there's this disagreement, the staff appealing to a couple of you board members, they doing them injustice. They don't just sit down and shut up. They work for you. I mean, I guess I'm old school. I'd have fired them a long time ago. Yeah, I know you all can't do that yet. I know we're probably going to need a change of pace. We're going to see what's going on in legislation next year, and we're probably going to see that with the governor as well in there. We're going to see a lot of changes forthcoming. We need to get the port in order. We need to have an assembly of what's supposed to be done on a timely basis, and you all absolutely have to have control, and that lawyer represents you all. It may do the work for the port in accordance with your direction and working with the staff to accomplish those goals. But all the interviews, the applications and the process and the hiring, firing is yours and should be. And you wouldn't run your own business like that either, to let staff dictate to you what you're doing. Ms. Newberry, I'm sorry, but you don't have a clue what you're doing.
Mr. Valet,
Okay.
he will be reporting to the board. It's in the legislation.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
He will be reporting to the board. It is in the legislation.
Reporting and being hired, interviewed, and fired and control is a whole lot different when you come down to the legal terms. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been in business long enough. I mean, guys, you know, I know none of you all are attorneys, but enough of you all have been in a business acumen to understand what's going on out here. You know, you're a very, very nice person. I know they see your bill of goods every Monday to where their little meetings go on. But I sit here and listen to the comments you make in legislation that you bring up. It's not even what a legislator would do. You're all the legislators. You dictate the policy, the procedures, and what they should be doing. And you see that they fulfill those goals. A couple of you all do. I'm amazed at the votes. I mean, I know you vote your way, and he votes his way, and a few other. And my good friend over there, I hope to God there's unity on this board. You all need to bring some of these things together and accomplish some goals. Thank you.
Commissioner Bartholomew.
It's my understanding that we have to approve the contract. And by approving the contract, we have the right to terminate a contract. If that's not so, please let me know.
Hi, Mr. Henry.
Yes, I have a question. If the port director had the authority to hire the attorney, well, who has the authority to fire him? So the council wouldn't have the authority to fire him? Somebody got to answer that question for me. Someone got to answer that question. Ms. Judy, you want to answer that question?
I'm sure we can write up legislation to fire him.
Hey, we gotta do things right and in order, people. Come on now, come on. But that's that $1 million question. If he has the authority to hire him, do the council and the board have the authority to fire him or terminate him? Who has the power to terminate him? We need to straighten that out. We need to straighten that out.
Commissioner Gui.
Ultimately, the answer to that is yes. This board can fire him, reduce the budget, do whatever we want, as long as there's 5 votes.
As long as there's 5 votes. Well, how come the council don't have the power to hire him?
We have,
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
we have to approve him. It takes 5 votes to approve him being hired.
Right.
So I don't know, I don't understand the complexity of it when 5 votes can hire, 5 votes can fire.
Right, but
I mean, tell me what am I missing?
because under y'all resolution or ordinance, whatever it is, it gives the port director the authority to hire. Now, but you all have the final say. Okay? But you guys don't get to interview none of the guys.
So,
You know?
does this board have the authority to hire?
Sure.
So we all
But it shouldn't be
fire.
it shouldn't be the authority of the port director. It should be the authority of the board to hire. That's my point.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Any other questions from the commissioners?
I call a question.
How much more?
Please step up to the mic, sir.
I called a question.
How many more items you got left for the council? You hear me?
No, but you have to step into the microphone so it could be on the record.
How much time before the council meeting starts?
However long it takes. Yep. All right. Mrs. Newberry called the question. The machine's going to be open in a second here. What's that? 4-4. Are y'all going to try to work together on something better? Trudy, who gave you the legislation? Who gave you the legislation?
Who gave me the legislation?
Yeah.
The legislation
Yeah.
introduced.
You produced it in your office?
We worked it out together.
You and the port staff? Why weren't they working with the chair on that?
You didn't come to me.
See how it is. All right.
You want to reintroduce it? Sure, reintroduce it.
All right. Go back to intros, please.
This is for Commissioner Roussel. An ordinance to create the legal department and the position of Executive Counsel of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District to amend the 2021 General Fund manpower structure and operating expenditure budget to provide for the legal department and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Roussel.
All right. Get it back down the agenda, please.
Somebody wants to reintroduce it, they can.
Just, I mean, in the future, I would love to see the commissioners just work closely together so we're not up here and embarrassed like this. I mean, I know that there were multiple attempts to meet. Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Item 6F, a resolution directing the cooperation of the staff of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Blink.
Offered as read. Anybody like to second the item? Seconded by Rousseau. Are there any questions from the port commissioners? Public? All right, I'd like to call a question. All right, passes 8-0. Thank you for your support.
Item 6G, a resolution establishing the date, time, and place of public hearings on the proposed 2022 operating budget and capital improvement budget as submitted by the Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. To authorize the Council Secretary to place the necessary public notice in the Plaquemines Gazette and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Blink.
I'd like to offer it as read. I just got a last-minute change from Dr. Gui. He's requesting another date. It's pretty hard to get all the frogs in the wheelbarrow right here at the table, though. Is there anybody else that's going to be? Yeah. Is there anybody else that would be missing from these dates? And this is after the initial change requested by Councilwoman Newberry.
Are we talking about the budget hearing? We need the dates for the
Yes.
staff consideration.
Yeah, just didn't want to. December 6th is what
Oh, later? Okay.
That's fine.
That's fine.
Dr. Gui was looking for.
When?
Dr. Gui would like to go to the 6th. If able, can we check our calendars, please? December 6th is Monday.
It's one day? One day only? Okay.
It's just, everybody knows it's.
Everybody has the 29th, yeah.
Y'all know that's a council meeting week also, just letting y'all know.
Just for the,
Same day, just the same day.
just for the record, the staff is fine with the 6th, if that's fine with the board.
Y'all okay with the change?
I don't know where I'm going to be today. I don't know.
All right.
Same time,
Well-
same place.
Yep, we'll write in the 6th.
Got it.
There was also an email sent in from Barry Becknell. He would like the parish to post the proposed budget on the website as soon as possible. If it can be done, will you please post it at the same time that is introduced at the council meeting? In the past, it has been several weeks after the council presentation before it was posted online. The council budget reports have not been updated online since June 24th meeting. Can you please post them before the meetings and post the ones that are missing? Supposed to be for the report and council.
The proposed budget will be posted to the website, and if for any reason there is a delay, we do outsource our website and the administration of that. But the proposed budgets are always available in all of the public libraries throughout the parish for public inspection. So if they're not on the website, they will be at the libraries. But our plan is to have that posted to the website tomorrow.
Thank y'all for getting it up on the website, Valley. It's helpful for residents. Rousseau?
Yeah. If we're having problems with the website administrator, perhaps you might want to look at the website administrator and change.
I'm not aware of any issues. I'm just saying if there was a delay in it, I'm not aware of a delay. But he's stating that there was a delay at some point of the budget being put there. I'm not aware of a delay. I will look into it, but like I say, we do outsource our administration on the website. So I will make sure of it that it's there. But I have not been informed, but she did say the comment was relating to the parish or the port, and they're not specific on which budget they're saying is delayed. But I'm not aware that our budget has ever been delayed.
Certainly. I think satisfying the request would go a long way to kind of ease some of these public tensions, just get that document out there early on. And
yeah, I presented to the board first. I like the board to receive those documents first, and then we post it for the public.
thank y'all for.
And we can, once we post it on the website, we'll let the board know that it was posted.
A link would be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be easy for you guys, and then you can send it out to your constituents, letting them know it's been posted.
Thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Excuse me, did we get a second on this? Stacy nor I heard it if we did.
Yeah, Rousseau seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Mr. Valley. Sorry.
Could we make sure the day you're going to have the public hearing on the budget, that the staff brings its complete financial records over to the meeting so that if any questions arise, they could call up the information from their computer that they would have it access to, so we don't have to have a delay in rescheduling another meeting and everybody walk away and say, oh, I don't have it with me. Could they be instructed to bring their financial records with them?
I'm sure that same mistake won't be made twice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
December 6th. I'd like to just offer with those changes. Seconded by Rousseau. We'll call a question. Oh. Now, just to let the public, and Justin, this might be important for you to write, give people some peace of mind, especially the workers on the ferries. There's going to be a period where the ferries will not be funded by Plaquemines Parish government, and we won't have a budget hearing completed for the port. So those folks are going to be very worried in that meantime, and it's up to this board to make sure that that ferry service is rolling. I was a little hesitant to make delays. I would prefer to do the port budget before, and I asked for the port budget to be done before on the Monday. Other members, Commissioner Newberry and Commissioner Gouy, asked me to push it back. I satisfied their request. I'd like all that written into the record, please. Yield. Yeah, it's fine. I just want the ferry workers who will have some financial uncertainty, whether their positions will be available or not, to know what's going on behind the scenes.
Question.
Got it.
Chairman, I would like to make a comment that the port proposed budget includes the manpower as is today for the ferry department. Nothing has been changed to the manpower or some security of those employees. We have proposed and presented a budget that funds all funded positions that was provided to us from PPG.
Got it.
And does it fund the full schedule?
It's the manpower. I know that we requested the manpower from PPG, and it was put into the port's budget.
The big issue around here has been the schedule and when the ferries run and don't run.
It has been proposed as it is in the parish's government currently.
So if the board decides to make the ferries run on a normal schedule as has been historically, we will have to make those amendments.
Amendments will be needed, correct.
Would you prepare those, please?
Yes, we'll discuss those at the meetings prior to the budget hearings, hopefully, because those numbers have not been provided to me. Only numbers have been provided to me was those that is currently in the budget.
I got that. I understand that. I'd ask Mr. Epley, who's sitting in the back, to please provide numbers to the port for a full-time schedule operational ferry operation as historically been created.
Moving along, please.
Item 6H, a resolution directing the Executive Director, Menard Sandy Sanders, to engage Louisiana State Civil Service to inquire the necessary steps and make recommendation to the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District regarding acceptance into the Louisiana State Civil Service System. Commissioner Blank.
I'd like to just offer for discussion only right now. All right. Are there any questions from the board on this? I'm sorry. Would anybody like to second this item?
That's second for
All right.
discussion only.
Seconded for discussion only by Commissioner Bartholomew. Are there any questions from the board on this? This is per request of port staff. They're looking to go in a different direction after having some issues with civil service. Right now, it appears that it's very cumbersome to hire folks, et cetera. They're looking to switch from the parish civil service system over to the state civil service system. Somebody described to me as this impediment being just as big of a problem as not having funding for positions where you can't get qualified folks to be hired in a timely fashion. Do y'all have any comments on some of the issues that y'all are experiencing with the parish system? And apparently these have been attempted to be remedied. No relief?
Yeah. So as you said, thank you, Mr. Blank, for putting this legislation up. As we talked about in our meetings with the vice chair, and you guys have a consensus to put up this legislation. Yes, we've had some difficulties regarding hiring, especially with our vessels, our fire boats. I think in 2020 we spent almost $200,000 in overtime, whereas we could have hired 3 individuals, preferably, to serve those positions. And in that time, I think there's been some difficulties of almost 18 months, getting candidates back in the process. We've had issues where there may be candidates that could be, meet the requirements. And let's just say, for sake of argument, it's 10 individuals. However, we only receive 3 individuals that civil service deems are the best for the roles, when that should be the responsibility, we think, of our staff and those directors that need those positions. It's been difficult to hire because we can't attract people at certain salaries. Frankly, some of our folks on the fire boats, we can have a minimum wage of $11 an hour, $11.78 an hour. And frankly, I can go through a drive-through and see that McDonald's is hiring for $15 an hour. And the people that serve on the fire boats have to have certain fire protection training, certain safety training, and Mr. Durr can speak to that issue. But also in-house, as we look to take on the ferry system, we're going to have to hire additional folks in the finance department and HR. And frankly, it's going to be very difficult with the current processes to hire those folks at a good market rate level for a public position with the current policies and systems in place. With the current civil service system. However, we see with the state civil service, there could be some opportunities to attract more individuals to same type of positions, same job descriptions, but more attractive rates, and possibly be more streamlined for those positions. Now, we don't know that for a fact, and that's why we've asked this legislation to really direct us to go and, as you like to say, Mr. Blank, find out where the warts and zits are and see what the pros and cons are. And after we do all that research and analysis, we come back to the board with a recommendation to continue to be where we are and work in that, or we look at going to civil service. In the meantime, we're working within what we have right now in the parish civil service, and we'll continue to do that. So we ask for a vote, on this so that we can just go and check the pros and cons and make a recommendation to the board.
Thank you very much. Commissioners are in the queue with questions. Councilmember Bartholomew.
I know for a fact that the state has different practices in hiring personnel rather than considering Plaquemines Parish civil service. There's more of a delay with Plaquemines Parish civil service than there is with the state civil service, even though we're under the state civil service, but we have different guidelines than what the state has. And so, for instance, a requirement for a certain position, you have to go through a process. State, you don't have to go through the process. If the recommendation is made by the hiring authority, they accept the fact that they just moved on in. But the parish is that you have to go through a process. And that eliminates the quality of time that you get to put somebody in the workforce. So there are some discrepancies of being inconsistent with the state, because I've researched some of it myself.
We're hiring. That'll be 6 weeks. Mr. Russo.
Yes. Have you had any discussions with the current civil service board and attorney that you're under now?
No, we haven't. No, we have not had the meetings or any discussions yet. I've asked the director of administration to initially just look into what state civil service has in positions and different things like that. She could probably speak to it more if she was here, but she's on personal leave today.
So you haven't even informed the civil service system in Plaquemines that you would like to do something of this nature?
I can actually. What we've found in the past is, and excuse my voice again, Mr. Russo, if we go to civil service through the director or try to go through the board, they want approval and direction from our board. Right. So we went there and asked for changes to make changes, but the board really doesn't want to look at a change. The commission, rather, Civil Service Commission, unless you guys direct it or approve what we're asking for.
There hasn't been a presentation to their board or anything like that.
Right, and
Right.
my understanding, after reading this introduction, I've done some research on my own as well, reached out to them, and their comments, well, at least one of the members, one of the attorneys commented to me that, that you did approach them for a pay increase for an individual, and it was turned down twice, and therefore you might want to be going somewhere else. But however, saying that, I did contact Mr. Byron Decatur, who is the state civil service director in Baton Rouge, and his attorney Sherry Gregoire. I don't think that the legislation is needed. I think that simply a letter of request to them, and I can read you his letter if you'd like. And his letter to me is that, dear Mr. Roussel, it was a pleasure to speak with you today. As per our conversation, I believe it would be in everyone's best interest to provide a comparison analysis between the state civil service system and the parish civil service system as it pertains to the employees of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District. Most critical would be an emphasis on a review that compares the two systems' classification and pay plans. This could be accomplished by a simple request of the director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District or the civil service director of Plaquemines Parish. We would need a listing of the port's current employees with their job title and current rate of pay. From there, we could work with the Plaquemines Parish Civil Service Director to determine what could potentially happen to the employer's job title, rate of pay, and other enrollment conditions if they moved into the state civil service system. For example, employees entering to our system, which means the state system, will need to meet the minimum qualifications and testing requirements in the state system in order to occupy a position. Furthermore, there is a potential that an employee may earn more than the maximum of the pay range in our system and could potentially have their pay impacted. I believe it is in the best interest of the port's employees that all risk benefits are considered before moving forward any formal instruments to the proposed move.
And we agree. And that's why we've come to our board today to ask you guys to direct us to do that, because we didn't want to get ahead of you guys on this issue. So that's why we brought it to the board, and then we'll follow suit with that. So I appreciate you bringing that to us.
Well, I appreciate that, but I read the legislation, and the legislation is regarding acceptance into Louisiana state civil service system. And that's not what we should be adopting here. We should be knowing what we're doing first. And so I would ask that the legislation, it doesn't really need to be. If you want to come back with a resolution authorizing you to compare the systems, that's fine. But at the end of the day, from the legal research that I've done with the lawyers involved, you're going to have legislation through Baton Rouge to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be opposed to having you guys handle legislation in Baton Rouge that affects the authority of this port.
We would not. What we would do is bring back what you just said along with other analysis and pros and cons, and then bring a proper recommendation on how to move forward to the board first before we did anything else, such as what you talked about, having to go to the state for legislation. That's why we come here today as you talk about transparency. This is something that we've been interested in. We have talked a great deal with the chair and vice chair about this issue, and that's why Mr. Blank, the chairman, has brought this legislation, this resolution to the board, because we want all of us to be on the same page on how to move appropriately. So all we're asking is that you could direct us to go out and do the research, some of you've already done, and different things like that, and then we come back with a recommendation on how to move forward, whether it's to stay where we are or eventually start the process for civil service, which obviously you guys will have to approve again to do something like that.
Mr. Roussel, just if I could you please just email that information over to them? It seems like it's a pretty good roadmap. Sometimes we're very well informed on the front end of intentions, other times not so much.
Let me say this about this transparency. If there's been so much transparency, the Civil Service Board of Plaquemines would be aware of this. If we would be working in cooperation.
We have spoken with the director, and we.
You have to interrupt me every time.
I'm sorry. I thought you were done. My apologies.
When I'm done, I'll let you know.
Okay.
So if there's transparency on this issue, then there should have been some outreach to the board and to the attorney and the legal staff at the Civil Service Board at the local level. And this could have been accomplished with a simple call to the director. And then we would be here looking at legislation to say, go do the comparison, not to research to move into the system.
Are you done, sir?
I'm thinking. I might not be.
Okay. You mind if I speak?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Well, if you recall, I believe it was late 2017, 2018, I actually went to the Civil Service Board of Plaquemines along with the Director of Administration to talk to them about the possibility of us moving to civil service. And in that meeting, you made a point of saying that the port should not do that. Now, moving to 2021, we did have a conversation with the current director, what's her name again, Miss Lambert, Miss Rochelle Lambert, and discussed currently what, from a short-term standpoint and a medium-term standpoint, we can do with the current system that we have, but also let her know that we were looking into the possibility of what would it take to possibly go to civil service, and if that would be a benefit or would that be a disservice to our staff. So we've already had that discussions with Ms. Lambert, and that was part of a comprehensive conversation on how to properly move forward and improve the value of our teams and service and hire different folks. So we've already had that conversation, and we had the conversation with our chair and vice chair. Now we're bringing it to the board, just asking you guys to allow us to do the research analysis and then come back with a recommendation.
So when was that conversation?
Maybe a month ago? Was it a month ago? About a month ago.
And the board doesn't know anything about it?
Well, we're telling you right now the process. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we had the conversation because we were concerned about. Oh, excuse me.
Civil Service Board.
Yeah, well, we didn't talk to the Parish Civil Service Board. We talked to the Parish Civil Service Director, and it was about some issues that we had regarding staffing issues and all the problems that we talked about today, and evaluation process and all that kind of stuff. And it was really comprehensive. I think it lasted probably about 2 hours. And one of the things we discussed was one of the short-term and intermittent term issues and how we can resolve them from a Plaquemines civil service side. And then also the discussion that we were also interested in possibly looking at all the opportunities on state civil service as a comparison. So we made that, we let that be known to the director. At the same time, we've been in conversations with the chair and vice chair, brought this to the table. We've been in discussions with the chair and vice chair that we were going to meet with the director of Plaquemines Civil Service. And now you have this legislation, which was a consensus between the staff, the chair, and the vice chair to ask the board to allow us to just look into this.
Well, I would ask that the chair move to defer this and get the language correct if we're going to go in this direction, and have the language state that we are looking for the comparison, not looking to move at this point.
We're not looking to move. We're looking to just research and analyze. There's no discussion of moving towards that. We just want to research, analyze, engage, and then come back with a recommendation to either stay or to move forward. We have no position at this time, one way or the other.
All right. There's another commissioner in the queue, and I'd like to say a few words too. Is it all for now, Mr. Rousseau? All right, Commissioner Gouy.
I think the letter that Commissioner Rousseau receives says what we have to do. He said get the executive director to speak to him about it. I don't think we need this legislation. I don't think we need any more discussion on this. I think we want to talk too much. It's been said. Benny? It was been said in the letter, correct? Correct. The executive director can make the overture, start the process, and then bring it back to us. I appreciate the efforts you did, but after hearing that, let's move on.
Mr. Rousseau, if you would send that to us, we appreciate it.
Yes.
All right. Withdrawn.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I
Valley.
could just make a comment on it. I've been involved in civil service and getting agencies out of civil service after Katrina. I was involved with the legislature in the city of New Orleans through the Housing Authority of New Orleans and their federal receiver to get the city out of doing business with civil service. I'm going to caution you all in that what you get into, you're going to have a tough time ever getting out of. Now, I'll say this, if you think it's tough hiring people now, and finding people to fit the qualifications that you all listen to, you all trying to hire employees, it's going to get worse. It can only get worse with the restrictions and the complications you get on it. I haven't heard of a need, and I've been in union contract negotiations, and it really boils down to, do you need this? And what benefit does it bring to you to put yourself in such a situation that you have lost control of your employees in the business that you all operate? And this is a business. I mean, they critically need to promote this port, not create an anarchy and a hierarchy, if you want to call it, of staff and employees to protect each other from it. They do a good job. I haven't heard of any people complaining about how they get treated down there or the pay scales or anything like that. And that's something you all need to evaluate. And I just want to caution you on that. Watch what you're getting into.
Yeah, and Mr. Valley, I mean, I see the port's frustration, and what I had asked of them is I had them produce a one-pager. What are the ailments? What's going on? What's the sticking points? And, Paul mentioned those earlier, but I had somebody reach out to the civil service administrator asking the contact information of the board because I wanted to discuss this with them and was flatly refused in the email. So, I mean, I'm starting to experience some of these things myself, and it's pretty frustrating. And, as I mentioned earlier, it can be just as large of an impediment as not having funding to hire people is when you can't get people through this tube. There's a lot of competition in the private sector, et cetera, and I mean, there are some issues that do need to be ironed out.
We're having a problem right now trying to find employees across the board in all industries.
Which is why the system needs
too many free dollars being spent out there till we get people back to work again. And, every industry we see out there, there's plenty of jobs. There's plenty, but there's no people. And when you start talking about putting the skill levels and the regimentation of the requirements in each little category, you back yourself in a corner. You can't be flexible.
Thank you, Mr. Alley.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda, please.
Item 6I, an ordinance authorizing Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District, to purchase land owned by Elliot P. and Carol P. Riley. Commissioner Newberry.
Yeah, I'm offer. Ask for a second.
Second. Offered by Newberry, seconded by Kognovich.
Yeah, this is part of the piano keys. I also asked administration how many properties were left to purchase the piano keys, so I am waiting on that. So I'm going to turn this over to administration.
I finally got that today. It's sensitive, and I'm going to send it to the board tomorrow. But it's something that we need to talk about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Pretty much as read. Anybody has any questions?
Yeah, one question.
Commissioner Russo.
Yes, on line 26, it says, a legal description attached here to as Exhibit A. Do you have Exhibit A, Ms. Newberry?
We can pull it up right now.
Paul, do you have Exhibit A?
I can pull up the description.
Could you just forward it to us rather than eat up all this time?
That's fine, but yes, sir, I will do that. I'll forward it to you, but I want to put it up on the screen if I may, so that way you guys can know exactly where we are.
And in the future, just have it attached to the legislation as it's stated.
Okay. Ms. Kim, if you may. Is it ready? Okay. Okay, let's see. 1 second, everyone. Just one more. There we are. So that's the property. I'll zoom out a bit. You can see that property is adjacent to, is adjacent and within parcel 3, further downriver, on our parcel 3 campus. Yeah. Everyone can see that on the screen? Okay.
I can see it. Is this a parcel that is included in the Venture Global second phase?
No, sir.
So we're going beyond that now?
No, these are all the standard piano keys that we've always discussed.
I know, but I thought we were going to block off. I mean, we weren't moving all the way down.
No, we're not. So this is included in that upriver side that we've talked about. These are not on the downriver side near parcel 4.
So where's the stopping point on this map?
For 3 would actually be where my cursor is, which is included in the current parcel 3.
Okay.
Is that clear? Okay.
Clear down. So we already own where the parcel where you had the arrow where the driveways are.
Yeah, we ran it out to somebody. For
Yeah, we're owning multiple parcels within there.
All right, thank you.
Are the asking prices reflecting what some of the folks in the back of the room are dealing with, which is the inability to build in a floodplain now without being elevated to dizzying heights?
Yeah.
I mean, we're paying, topped out, like you could just come in and move in and without having to adhere to some very burdensome regulations foisted upon us by FEMA. I mean, there's property values reflecting that?
Yes, they've been appraised, and that's all affected.
On it. Okay. Is the appraisal available? Is that in Exhibit A?
Yeah, we could provide that if it hasn't been sent to everybody. I can get that to you.
It's consistent with
I'll provide it.
on other parts.
Yeah, I'll provide it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Forche?
Yes, what is the amount? What are we paying for this property?
Mrs. Newberry, you're the author of the legislation.
It's a total of 81,000.
$81,000 for a piece of property that now a lot of these people can't even build on. So these people are getting a sweetheart deal compared to what some of these people will be faced with, if I'm understanding correctly, Mr. Richie Blink, Chairman?
I'm sorry, it's $77,652, and we have attorney fees involved, so that gives us a total of 81.
So I think that would be really good information for a lot of these people that are down the road that can't get permits to put their trailers on their property that have been destroyed and things such as that. So I think that the value of this property is going to dramatically reduce. So I suggest we do not buy this property at this point in time, because in 6 months down the road, when none of these people can do anything with their property because they can't put a house back on it, without some act of God allowing them to, from what I'm understanding, from talking to some of these people that have been told that they have to put their homes 13 to 16 feet in the air, and it's going to the cost of about $80,000 to lift that piece of, or to put the piece of the house elevated. So, I mean, I suggest we do not buy this property until we find out exactly what this piece of property is truly worth.
Point taken, Mr. Forche. We're not in a vacuum. I mean, this is going to be next to an extremely large, potentially noisy industrial facility with a lot of light pollution, most likely. Wish it wouldn't, but maybe. Also, there might be other buyers that might realize we have to have it. Maybe not. I don't know. But a lot of that property purchasing down there, some of the adjacent stuff does seem to be somewhat speculative.
Look, I'm all for making all the money that this one person can get. $80,000 would be great, but I think that as a citizen of this parish, okay, then we need to look at what we're paying for property and what we could purchase the property for whenever we actually need it. And I don't think at this point in time we actually have to have this piano key, as we've so often adopted the saying for the piano keys. We seem to put little tickler words on things but these pieces of property, I think, needs to be evaluated, and making sure that we need the property when we buy it. That's all I'm saying. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, please.
Call a question.
Oh, we didn't vote on it. Moving along, please.
Item 6J, a resolution approving and authorizing Mr. Menard J. Sanders, Port Executive Director, to accept proposal presented by Infinity Engineering Consultants, LLC, for the bidding and construction phase for the B3 relocation 5-year capital improvement project, and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Newberry.
Yeah, I'd like to move with this and ask for a second. Yeah, this is, as we all know, this is where Port Ship's located. It's the B3 project. We're finally at an opportunity here where we're presented with a proposal that, get that? That we've all received? Yeah. So I'll just turn it over to the administration. They can better explain it.
I'd like to bring up Infinity Engineering, who's been handling our design for the project, and they're going to be working with us to enter into this bid construction phase. And this right. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Rachel Kenny. I'm the Chief Engineer with Infinity Engineering. Just want to give you a brief status of the project and what we're recommending to move the project forward. We are 100% complete with the design. We have received the Army Corps of Engineers permit, and we do have some minor permits left, but that won't prevent us from bidding. So the project's ready to go out for bid and go for construction now. Just for reference, this is what the present B3 site, port ship site looks like, and then the next slide is going to be our design. It's the site plan for our design. Go to the next one.
Hey, there's a presentation going on. Can y'all please take it in another room?
Yeah, we finished.
Thank you.
We better.
My apologies.
Going across the table.
The opinion of probable cost that we've created is $6.1 million. And a lot of that cost was inflated due to the Army Corps of Engineers requirements. We based our cost estimate on conversations that we had with fabricators and contractors, and we got estimates from contractors and fabricators. So, and the price has gone up because of the supply chain disruptions, the worker shortages, and the cost escalation of materials. The construction schedule that we've estimated is 14 months, and that's also based on conversations with contractors. Our proposal to complete the bidding and construction CA phases of the project is $346,000, and to finish the permitting cost is to compensate for permitting efforts that we made in good faith to get the project to move forward, and a small amount also to finish out the permitting. And then the project representative would be $215,000. The project is to relocate the current port ship facility. It's about half a mile downriver from where it currently is, and that's to facilitate the Venture Global construction.
Yeah. This is also included in our 5-year capital program budget. Sean Bell, you want to talk to that?
Yes, it has been included in the 2022 proposed budget for the increase. We did have a small amount of funds that were already appropriated from the previous years with the design phase, and we had some of that was left over, so we increased it up to match their proposed budget. But it is in the proposed 5-year capital improvement budget in your binders.
Is that all for the presentation?
It is. Do you have any other questions for us?
Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Russo.
Yes, the same day I received this October the 25th, 21 letter, I sent an email back to the port asking them for a to-date expenditure of this project. Do you have that today?
Yes, sir.
Well, could you forward it to us and put it on a screen?
Yeah. I forwarded, actually, I sent it as soon as we were able to get everything compiled for that project, and I sent it to the board, so everyone has it. That's correct.
So when did you send it? Because I don't have it.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't have it right now. I just sent it this afternoon once we got it finalized, so that we made sure it was very clear. So with that, we wanted to bring the presentation today, and I think it'd probably be appropriate if you guys decide to defer it so that you have that information as well.
Well, in my dealings with Venture Global, I don't want to put them any further behind than what they already feel like they are, because this project has been going on for many, many years, and this is a project that should have been completed without going into the history of it. I'm just curious to know the total expenditures to date of what the total project is, and if you would break it down by land acquisition, attorney's fees to expropriate it, and those items that we have already spent on engineering and the total cost, I would have an idea of what this whole cost, because the construction cost alone of $6 million, we are spending more on this one project than we paid for the entire 1,000 acres.
I agree. We agree.
I mean,
We agree.
Yeah, we agree, but I mean, you have been managing this project from the time that they gave it to you, and, I've compiled my own file on this project.
Okay.
Dealing with the Corps, Raul, I mean, I don't know who got behind or what happened, but, somebody here dropped the ball somewhere to be able to cost. I can show you several balls that were dropped from the day that we should have purchased the property, but, that's another story in itself when we had to go back and expropriate it. So how much did we spend to date?
To date on this project since 2017 is $737,569.
Land acquisition, the whole bit, the attorney's fees.
That's all included. Attorney fees, permitting, design.
That's not the land portion.
I'm sorry.
not sure what land acquisition.
Okay. So the 700, forgive me, we're not sure what land purchase you're discussing on this, but all the invoices and expenses that the finance team has been able to pull up specific to this project between engineering, permitting, design, legal, all that included, which I have sent to the board. My apologies, we couldn't get it till today. It's $737,569.93.
Now, the land that the B3 is being moved to,
I don't want to talk about that yet. I want to get a total of how much we had to spend to expropriate the property.
the property we expropriated is B1. It was B1. We're speaking of B3.
So Port Ship Services property we didn't expropriate?
No, we did not. We're relocating B3 to a piece of land that is included in parcel 3.
So what did we pay for the property?
For parcel 3?
To move the cost. I'm not going to eat up any more of this time. This is what I'm looking for. I want to know from the day that we dropped the ball on not purchasing it and had to go to the expropriation process.
That's not what we've done, sir. That's a totally separate issue. That's B1. This is the B3 project. This is the port ship project where we're doing a land swap, sir. So we have a piece of property that we're moving them to, and we're going to acquire the property that they currently have for access and be contiguous with the property. So those are two conflating issues, sir.
I'm not talking about the issue. So in other words, when we didn't purchase it, when our option expired, and then we had to go to court.
That was B1.
That was B1.
It has nothing to do with B3, this project.
So what is B3? Is where we moving them to?
Correct. That's the B3 relocation. It's not the B1 issue. Those are two separate issues.
Well,
If I may.
I tie them together because we have to move them from here to here, and I look at the project as one.
Gotcha.
The property that we expropriated, B1, is owned by the port, and it will not have anything to do with B3.
I understand that, but
I get what you're saying.
It cost us money.
Those two pieces. Okay. We'll get you the total price for B1, and then the total price for the B3 relocation. And if yes, I got it.
And we'll include that with what I sent you today.
So we're about $1.2 million on engineering and design. When you add the $737,000 that you said, plus the $600?
That's with the construction project, yep.
This is permitting, engineering, and legal.
All right.
All of it.
Look, I sent that email the other day, and I would appreciate you to go back and read it. And if it's clear what I'm looking for from the day that we had to move them, we had to acquire that piece of property to clear it for Venture Global.
You talking about B1 or B3?
I'm talking about the whole project I look at as one.
Okay.
We had to buy B1, expropriate it, go to court, spend a lot of legal fees, so to clear that piece of property, and then we decided that we were going to be the landlord down the river and build them what we were taking away from them. Is that correct?
That's the B3. That's the swap. Yeah, that's a separate. But you see them as same projects. We'll get that to you. Yep.
For clarification for folks that are following this, the port ship property consisted of a couple of dolphins, a barge that was movable with a crane on it, an elevated shed, an elevated living quarter type deal, and a parking lot. It was a very simple operation. They would bring groceries to ships. Super straightforward. Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District decided instead of just buying them out and letting them deal with all this stuff on their own, which they don't have as deep pockets, Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District, not this council cohort, but one before, decided to expropriate that property, move them downriver. So now we're having to recreate all of this stuff in a much more complicated world. Mr. Chauvin, you agree that, now they have to, 50 years ago when this facility was built, you didn't have to deal with wetland mitigation issues. You could just plow over wetland, no big deal. We knew all these things going in.
No,
right?
That's not entirely correct.
I mean,
Okay.
the Clean Water Act was passed in
These
1970.
folks-
These things
these
are required.
folks-
Mr. Sanders, if I may please finish.
Go
The Corps of
ahead.
Engineers has slope stability issues. It's very, very complicated to deal with. That's why we have to have an engineering firm. We created this problem ourselves.
We did.
We did.
Huh?
The port created this problem. And this is like new capital outlay or
port-
something, man. It's a
the
whole
port
new
did
way
not create this
to
problem.
give people money. And it's
The Corps of
just
Engineers,
more complicated than it
you
needs
can
to
no
be.
longer ride over the levee as they can right now in their present location. So the Corps, under the new legislation, you have to bridge over the levee. That, and then with the COVID and with supply chain, that is causing a lot of costs.
Sandy, a lot of these were knowns, especially the Corps of Engineers, heightened requirements, the Clean Water Act stuff that we have to comply with. We can't just willy-nilly take these facilities and decide to rebuild them like it's going to be a $100,000 job or something. We just cannot keep.
Well, they didn't have to. They didn't have to agree to swap either. They could have stayed right where they are.
Well,
Are we voting on it or deferring it? Let's,
Kurt?
Let's just defer it. We'll vote on it next week.
Item 6K, a resolution electing the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District Chairperson.
Defer.
6L, a resolution electing the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District Vice Chairperson for 2022 and otherwise to provide with respect thereto. Commissioner Newberry.
I'd like to offer. Next for a second. I'll defer this one too. Can I defer it? I already moved with it. Can I still defer it? Okay.
Item 7A, there are none. 7B, PLT discussion and update. Commissioner Roussel.
I think the staff said that there's no update on PLT through an email.
Item 7C, discussion of calendar items, which you've already gone over. Item 8, approval of October 14th, 2021 meeting minutes.
offer.
Offered by Cognovich, seconded by Bartholomew.
Who?
John. Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Offered by Cognovich, seconded by Newberry. Machines open. All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District closed at 5:36 p.m.